Hello, my name is Amber. I just watched episode 7 of The Music Freaks and I am very, very angry, so, here I am, venting out my frustrations using a text to speech app. So, before you start typing angry hate comments telling me that I suck and that I couldn't do better, let me tell you this, I definitely could do better, but that's not the point. I don't hate Rosie Closey, I think she's extremely talented when it comes to animating, but unfortunately, her writing just isn't as good. I'm honestly not trying to be rude when I say this, but The Music Freaks just isn't good. The animation is absolutely amazing and I applaud Rosie on that, but everything else falls flat, and even though her audience can't see that, I can, so I'm just here to tell everyone my thoughts. Okay, so first, I'm going to start with episode 1. Despite it being one of the better episodes, it still falls extremely flat in certain aspects, one of those being Daisy. She's painted as some sort of angel, which is fine, it's from Jake's point of view, he has a crush on her, so it's obvious that she'll be seen as someone who's flawless, that's not my issue. My issue is, however, that Jake, who claims to have a passion for music, only joins the music club because of Daisy. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but I find it really fucked up that he says he has a passion but knows for a fact he wouldn't have joined the club if Daisy didn't ask him to, he'd have continued to bully them, which once again, is fucked up. So basically, what Rosie is saying, is that without Daisy, Jake would still be a shitty person, so he needed someone to make him better, which is a really toxic character trait. Needing someone to change your toxic behavior isn't something he should be proud of. He hasn't changed at all, unless he can change on his own, without the help of others, he's still the same. Despite what Rosie fans may say, him joining the music club wasn't development, it was basically just a slap to the face. Another thing about episode 1 that bothered me is the fact that Drew, Henry and Liam were made out to be absolutely horrible people for calling Xander and Haley music freaks, but Haley made an insensitive joke about daddy issues and it was brushed over and she was painted as some sort of hero. As someone who actually does have daddy issues, I find it so disgusting that her saying that was brushed over and completely ignored by the fans and Rosie herself, and overshadowed because Drew called them music freaks. I don't know about you, but I think a joke about family issues is much worse than a, might I say it, harmless joke about them being freaks. Episode 2 was by far the best episode, probably the one with the least issues and the only reason I continued watching the series in the first place. I'm glad this episode didn't focus on romance and actually focused on the development of Xander, and him coming to terms with the fact that Jake wasn't a terrible person, even though, as you probably know already, I don't think is true. So, that brings me to the only thing I can find wrong with this episode. Xander and Haley forgive Jake a little too easily for my liking. I haven't watched the episode in a while, but I find it a little undermeaning because Jake was a really shitty person to them and suddenly they don't care and brush over it. Once again, as someone who's been bullied before, it took a lot for me to forgive that person. I understand that people grieve differently, but it took one day, and the only reason they forgive him is because he joined the club. So basically, what Rosie is saying is that as long as someone's in the club, their toxic behavior can be forgiven, but Drew, Henry and Liam can go fuck themselves. It just sounds biased and definitely not something that should be promoted in a show that is mostly for kids. Episode 3 isn't that bad, but it's the only episode one can confidently say definitely shouldn't be promoted to anyone under 13. Not only do they talk about sugar daddies, but there's also violence, and mentions of cheating. I'm sorry, but I don't care how mature your audience is, they are kids. Sugar daddies shouldn't even be talked about, let alone having a whole scene about it. Also, sugar daddies are basically for young girls, boys and theys who want to sell their bodies for money. Firstly, Zoe is a teenager, and the fact that she's exploited like that is disgusting. Secondly, something like that shouldn't be used as blackmail. It's a serious issue, especially for a teenage girl such as herself. She could be in literal danger, yet Jake thinks it's more important to get Millie's diary page back. That whole scene is fucked up and shouldn't be romanticized, nor should it be seen as something humorous. Secondly, Millie's behavior isn't excusable just because Zoe bullied her. She attacked Zoe. Just because Zoe's a bad person doesn't mean she deserves that. The amount of people calling Millie a queen in the comment section is disturbing because she literally portrayed violent behavior against another living person. That isn't okay. And once again, it's glorified, and Millie is treated like a hero because she's a main character. My next 2 points are definitely less serious, but they deserve to be talked about as well. This episode basically highlights why Jake is a bad friend. Drew, someone who is meant to be his friend, is being cheated on, and Jake, who is supposed to be his friend, knows this, but instead of telling Drew like the good friend he's portrayed to be, he uses it as blackmail to help out Millie, which is nice, but it goes to show that he's basically replacing Drew at this point. He's leaving him for the music club, which is toxic as hell and is once again glorified and brushed over. It's fucked up. Drew is a shitty person, but he doesn't deserve to be replaced. Nobody does. As for my next point, Millie, who, as I said earlier, portrays violent behavior against another student, is in the end put into a romantic situation that is supposed to change her and make her less violent. It's becoming a pattern in the Music Freaks. Rosie is romanticizing bad situations and acting as though romance makes you better. Spoiler alert, it really fucking doesn't. Now, moving on to episode 4, well, to put it lightly, this episode was a hot mess. To put it strongly, it was an absolute dumpster fire. So, this was Luke's episode, felt more like a Lander episode, but that's not something I wanna get into. Luke has a crush on Xander, okay, that's fine, pretty much everyone knew that, but instead of focusing on Luke and his character, they focus on Luke and Xander's relationships. But why though? This whole episode is, I only exist because of a ship. At its finest, Luke has absolutely no character, he's bland, overrated and downright boring, and the reason for that is because the only reason his character exists is because of Xander. Basing a character off another character is setting that character up for failure. Having relationships is fine, but when you make a character only exist because of another, said character isn't a character anymore, they are just a love interest, that's it. Luke might as well not be a character. I don't get why they gave him an episode when all that happened in that episode was, oh my gosh, I like Xander. What about Luke? It's his episode. What's his home life like? Does he have siblings? What's his favorite food? Why does he like the drums so much? All these questions, yet the only thing that happened in this episode was Xander in all caps with an exclamation mark. Episode 5 was basically episode 4 but with less Luke and more Xander. This episode was Xander in all caps and an exclamation mark, but instead of Xander it's Luke. That's the issue though. These episodes were basically photocopies of each other besides the obvious, Stacy and the kiss scene. I don't dislike Stacy, I just have a problem with the fact that she was only created as a plot device, so, she has no character, she was only there to like Luke and make drama. She's basically Luke but with even less of a character. Another thing I have a problem with is the fact that both Luke and Stacy kissed someone without consent. Consent is important, it's very important actually, and neither of them knew whether the other party would recuperate. People might say, oh but Xander clearly liked Luke so it's okay. It really isn't. Kissing someone without consent is disrespectful, and could also be extremely damaging. Keep in mind that some people are triggered by kissing and some people could be asexual or aromantic. Consent is important because of many reasons. It doesn't matter if you know they like you. So basically, even though it might be harsh, I think both Stacy and Luke should be held accountable for that. Serious issues, such as this, continue to be brushed over in favor of less serious topics such as shipping. Half the shit the heroes of the story do aren't okay, yet nobody cares, but when Drew or Zoe does something even remotely toxic they're called snakes and attacked. It's a double standard if I'm being honest. I don't feel that strongly about episode 6, but I do have an issue with the fact that the episode doesn't really focus on Sean. He gets less screen time than Millie does even though it's meant to be his episode. All we learned about him is that his parents fight sometimes. Elaboration would have been nice, but no, they focused on him losing his laptop, something that wasn't as serious as it was made out to be, and instead of focusing on something that's actually important, the episode was basically just fanservice for Jaylee and Lander shippers. Onto my next point, when Jake pushed Haley against that wall, I really wish they talked about it more because honestly, consent is a thing, he shouldn't have done that without asking first, but since lack of consent is romanticized, Millie acted like it was a joke, Haley blushed and didn't even attempt to lecture him about it. The only one who actually cared was Xander, but that was made out to be humorous. If you haven't noticed, none of it was funny. Once again, this episode shows Jake continuously showing that he's a toxic friend. Not only did he lie to Drew, he was also willing to give away the laptop Drew gave to him because Sean needed one. You can call it being a good friend, but in order for him to be a good friend to Sean, he needed to be a bad friend to Drew, so in turn, he wasn't a good friend in the first place. If he needs to be a bad friend in order to be a good one, then no, I'm sorry to break it to you, but he's a shitty person. I wrote a rant about episode 7 earlier and I can't be bothered to rewrite it, so here you go. Am I the only one who doesn't like the Music Freaks? I liked it for 2 episodes. After that, it went downhill. I continued to watch it though because it was a huge upgrade from pretty much every other gacha series, but I just watched episode 7 and I'm really disappointed. Amao. I don't have a problem with the episode as a whole. I like the details such as Drew, Henry and Liam where all Jake had. I've been there, so I understand where Jake is coming from, but what Haley said really pissed me off. They aren't your friends, they don't respect what you're doing, we are your friends. It sound a lot like manipulation if you ask me. Nobody did, but I'm angry and ticked off so I'm ranting out my frustrations. I've never liked Haley, she rubbed me the wrong way since the comment about daddy issues she made back in episode 1, but this just makes me angry. As someone who's been through something similar to that, Jake saying, they aren't your friends, doesn't do shish. They were all I had, and even if they were toxic, they helped me, they loved me, and hearing something like, if they don't respect your passion, they aren't your friends, is just stupid. If my friend committed a crime, I wouldn't respect it, of course I wouldn't, for the love of Christ I'd despise it, but in the end they are still my friend. You don't have to support every little thing your friend does to be their friend. Then of course, the we are your friends once again sounds a lot like manipulation. Amao. She's practically telling him that he doesn't need them and that they are better and will sorta replace them. So basically, she's asking him to stop talking to Drew because he's a bully and doesn't respect his singing, which is stupid ASF. Amao. Henry and Liam actually do respect Jake and aren't actually bullies. Not really, they just hang with the wrong crowd. IG, so Haley is basically blaming the two of them, saying Jake should stop being friends with them for something Drew did. She herself said she believed in second chances, but because Drew is sorta a jerk, he deserves to lose his friend and be abandoned. Haley is basically encouraging the idea of replacing your friends with new people, which is a really shitty thing, but of course, because she's a main character, it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, and maybe I'm just being dramatic because I despise Haley, but what she's saying is wrong. It's manipulation and it encourages the idea of replacing, abandoning and leaving your old friends because you found new people, no matter how bad Drew may be. I don't think he deserves any of that. Anyways, I'm angry ASF. The message for this episode isn't a good thing. Amao. It's just gross. It's a terrible writing choice to paint Haley as this person who saves him, when in actuality all she did was encourage him to be just as bad as them. Also, this episode encourages the I'll save you trope. Jake was broken in a way, he even said he wishes he was somebody else, and Rosie's probably gonna make Haley rescue him, but in actuality, if you need someone to rescue you from yourself, you shouldn't even be in a relationship. Jake isn't in the right state of mind, he needs to find himself before he can even think about dating. Sorry for the informality of my episode 7 rant, I wrote it to a few of my friends so it wasn't meant to be painted in a formal light, but yeah, as you can see, Jake and Haley are my least favorite characters and they suck. Stop excusing their behavior, it's annoying. Being a main character doesn't mean they can't do bad things. As someone who absolutely despises the idea of Mary Sue's, I find it disgusting that both Haley and Jake portray toxic behavior, yet it's excused because they aren't the antagonists. Don't paint bad things in a good light, it's really triggering and shouldn't be glorified. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. Feel free to attack me in the comment section, or have a friendly or not so friendly debate in the comments.